listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
All right, welcome to episode number 70 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and joining me today is Dave Lyme. From Australia originally, David has been around rugby for most of his life. Having only started coaching in 2014, he had immediate success with the Fairfield Yankees men's team out of Connecticut, who went on to win the USA Rugby Division III National Championship in 2016. Currently, he's the head coach of Sacred Heart University, Staples High School, and Westport P.A.L. Youth Rugby, as well as doing some consultancy work with his company Scrum Down Rugby. And it's a pleasure to have him on the show. So welcome, Dave.
Hey, Andy, how are you, mate? Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Good to talk to you and chat rugby in North America, and especially
Absolutely.
You being in Connecticut, me being in Montreal. We're probably only 4 or 5 hour drive away.
Yep.
Probably facing some of the similar challenges and similar. We're seeing some of the similar chances that are there for athletes and clubs and programs. So yeah, it'll be good to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to kick off, what's a bit of your backstory in terms of playing before you got into coaching?
Oh, Andy, I played in high school or at school. Grew up in Sydney. Started playing when I was 4 and played for 30 years. All over the place. Some representative rugby, high school rugby. Played for Eastwood for a little bit, rugby club in Sydney, also Gordon, and then moved on to sub-district level, Linfield, Kings Old Boys, Barker Old Boys, and then ended up at the Mudgee Wombats to finish my career out.
Yeah, we were talking a bit off air, the mighty Mudgee Wombats. I've got very, very fond memories of Mudgee. Went out there for the notorious Mudgee Sevens. I don't know if they still have that tournament, but I hope so, because that was a lot of fun.
It was a great place to play rugby. A lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Cool. Now, how'd you end up in the US, and what was some of your, when you did start, dipping your toe in the water for coaching? What were some of your early observations in terms of the playing landscape from a coach's lens?
Oh, look, I've been here for 12 years or so, and as I said, started coaching about 5 years ago. But prior to that, I was looking around and really didn't know that there was a great deal of rugby in America, and just started to pick it up and then notice it. And then I was invited to, because of the silly accent that I have, come down and help a particular team in our local town. And it all sort of went from there. But it was, it's looking at what they've done here, particularly, let's just say the 5 years that I've been involved, it has been a massive change in the understanding of the game. The culture of the game has increased. And respecting the game of rugby overall, I think, has just gone tenfold. And it's been a wonderful growth period to me, from what I've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah, cool. And what just expand on that a little bit around the culture of the game and how you've seen that changed?
Well, I've seen people start to, understand what this game can do, understand that it's a real world game, and it's just not confined to the borders, and look at it and say, well, gee whiz, this is a game that you can learn so much in, and you can be a part of a team. You can grow, and it can help you you can be involved in it for as long as you like. It's not a game that you finish high school and you're done. It's a game that you can play for as long as you want to play in, and as many levels as you want to play in. And the opportunities have just opened up so massively in the United States at the moment for that, for everybody, and that's going for players and coaches alike.
Yeah, and you with MLR, with university possibilities on the horizon, and sevens, you'd also say that there's still a really high ceiling there that's nowhere near being met.
We have not even touched it. I don't think. We're just on. It hasn't even started really. It's got so much further to go. It's phenomenal.
All right, so yeah, like I touched on in the intro, you've 5 years, relatively short time in coaching. Yeah, you had some early success there with the Yankees. What do you think some of the key areas that you focus on really kind of got you some nice bang for your buck there?
When I coach, I guess it started right at the start when I started coaching, and having been coached for 30 years by a dozen or so different coaches, you sort of put all that together, what you can remember, of course, and put it all together and sort of decide what you want to do as a coach. And I was very clear and concise in my decision as to what I wanted to do, and you've one of the things that is really important is respecting the game, respecting each other, self-belief, mindfulness, just understanding that when we go out there, most people that want to play the game are athletes to start with. So if we can get what I've found, if I can get the skills right, the basic skills, don't overcomplicate the game. That's one of the biggest things. And then just put it together and have them believe in themselves and understand things. And then, and it just sort of goes from there.
So
and I was lucky to get with the Yankees. I had a phenomenal group of athletes that had played some time, not necessarily a great deal, maybe played 2 or 3 years. And once they got the mindset right and the belief that they could do anything they wanted to do on a Saturday if they chose to, then away we went.
Yeah, so it's interesting there. You mentioned skills once, but then you mentioned a whole bunch of soft skills. In terms of mentality and approach, and teamwork and cohesiveness. Those kind of things of just being good mates with each other and stuff like that. That's really interesting. What's your kind of viewpoint there in terms of forming a team and an environment around that stuff?
Well, as I say, I do a lot of mindfulness at training with them and have them understand things. We're not missing out on the skill level of it and the game plan and it's all about, we trained last night, we trained today. I want to train better than I did last night. So we've got to be better every day. Saturday, we want to play better than we did last Saturday. And it's all about that based off a simple game plan. Nothing complicated, because I can't, they haven't grown up with it. So a lot of the men and kids that I'm coaching have got a limited knowledge of the game. So the simpler you keep it, I find the more enjoyment they get, and then they'll start to increase their level as you go along. But as long as you're keeping them positive about everything that they're doing, and having them believe in each other, trust in each other, and believe in themselves, really just believe in themselves that they can do whatever they want to do when they take that field, then you can get that to work.
Yeah. And I think, it's good profiling of the player group there. You're looking at it and saying, well, I might not have a fly half who can kick 50 meters and who can, do a cut pass that misses out half the field. So we can't play that kind of style of rugby. So
an example of that, mate, exactly, is that my national championship winning team in 2016 didn't kick a ball.
Yeah.
We didn't kick. I'm not a big fan of kicking for starters.
Yeah.
But being a front row, but just having a guy that can kick the ball 50, 60 yards, we didn't have. So I gave them the belief that, we hang on to the ball, we attack it from everywhere. Let's do that. And they bought in, and we were able to do that. We were able to achieve that.
Oh, that's cool. And what do you that something like that's got a shelf life as the game progresses? How are you seeing that in your coaching in terms of as the game and the players and the clubs get better around you? How are you looking to adapt to that?
Look, you're always wanting to make changes, I think, and whenever you're at the top, there's only one way to go. Whenever you're down the ladder, there's only one way to go. So you're wanting to every year look at how you can change that team, adjust that team, change the plan that we have, or the game plan being that, and look at different ways of doing things. And so there might be a setup or but the basic premise that I work on is that it's just very simple. It's really straight up 101 rugby, the KISS principle all day long. And but we can change directions or pods or things of that nature and adjust those from season to season. And then you might find a guy who can actually kick. Okay, all of a sudden we've got a young man who's just turned up who can kick. Okay, we can add that to our resume now and create another option for our game plan. So you've got to work it. It's really important. I find that as a coach, you've got to coach what you're given. And at this level, particularly, I'm not at an international level. You're choosing what you want, but at this level, we're more or less coaching what we're given, and what we need to do is create what we're given into a force that can go forward and do what we want it to do every week.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, what in your time coaching so far in the US, what have been some of the areas in your coaching that you've realised? Okay, I need to upskill in that area. I need some development in that area, and how have you gone about kind of chipping away at that?
Personally, in my coaching ability, or
yeah, you as a coach, what areas?
Look,
that you
the biggest, I think the biggest thing was the communication, and when I start, like any Aussie, Andy, as we know, when we start talking and gibbering and on the sideline and during training, no one understands the bloody word we're saying.
Yeah, try that with half the team being French Canadian.
Yeah. So what I had to learn very quickly was to obviously keep my chats very short, concise, and very, very clear, and do the best I could to come across as clear and concise as possible in a shortest amount of period, because you're not going to hold them for too long, and I want that information to go through. And then you need to choose what it is you need to work on. You can come off a field on a Saturday and have two pages worth of things that you've done wrong. You need to take 2 or 3 of those and decide that's what you're going to work on this week, and that's it. And not, because otherwise too much information will confuse them and slow them right down. So that was the biggest thing I've found really with my coaching, is just my communication skills of really being very clear, concise, and understanding.
Yeah, that's good advice. And yeah, I find that too, and that's why I like using the principles of play for rugby, in that you look at a game, you're on the sideline, and then you're assessing, okay, what's our go forward like? Okay, that's pretty good. Our offload game doesn't seem to be working today, so we've got to link that back to our support, and that's affected our continuity. So it just places those easy little pieces there that the players understand. You can design your practice plans around that. So it sounds like you're doing something similar.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Okay, you've had a lot of success in growing the participation numbers within a number of the grassroots programs that you're working with over in Connecticut. What have been some of your successes in doing that, and especially being based in the States, similar landscape to Canada in terms of the position that rugby is in terms of the other mega sports there. What have been some of the difficulties in growing those programs?
Well, what we've found is that we've introduced a sport into, let's say, Staples High School and Westport P.A.L. youth rugby. We've grown. Since I came into the Staples High School program, I've been coaching there as head coach for 3 years. We've had, we've gone from about 30 children, 30 boys, up to, we're going to top out at about 80, 85 this year.
That's awesome.
We've got 4 teams now, which is fantastic. The youth level now has gone, in the last 3 years, has gone from 0, obviously, to, we'll probably get to about 50 or 60 kids in that program this year. That's U10, U12, and U14.
Okay.
So, but what it's about, and the most important thing for all of that, is that one of the main things is, as a coach, I don't talk about winning at all. I do not discuss that. We don't talk about either the varsity level, first 15 at high school, or even my men's team that I used to coach and my other teams that I coach. I never talk about winning. I just don't believe in talking about that. We will set our goals at the beginning of the season, where we have a period of about an hour that we can talk about whatever it is we want to talk about in regards to winning every game we play, whatever it may be. But once that session is over, that is it. And so we've set our goals, and then we need to achieve those throughout the season. And I find once you take those sort of pressures off, particularly young men, or any men for that matter, it sort of makes a change. With the high school and the fact that we don't talk about that, and the youth level, we're all about safety and just enjoyment of the game. All I want to do at the end of the day is create a rugby supporter. I don't, I have 85 kids there this year, and I could probably pick half a dozen that will end up playing after school. And that is perfectly okay with me.
Yeah.
because I've now hopefully created a further 80 rugby supporters for life that will maybe get into business, understand how to communicate with other people in the business life, how to mature themselves and work in a team environment, maybe travelling overseas and find that they're at a Six Nations game in the UK and be able to watch it and communicate with their business colleagues on a high level that they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of things that I look for and that I'm trying to do, and that's just built the camaraderie around that and the enjoyment. And certainly don't yell and scream it. I think that's the old style coaching, because that's gone, I think.
Yeah, hopefully, but I think it's still present. So. But it's at least people are aware of it now, and it's frowned upon to a point where it's okay. You have to change, or we're going to move on.
I think that's really important. There's no need for that in this game, and I don't think there's any need for that in any game. But when you take that part away and it's about just having some fun, we're out there having some fun. If we make a mistake, perfectly okay, and you are guaranteed that no team member is going to get down on you because they are not allowed, because I make that very clear.
How many kids that you've coached have made mistakes on the rugby field deliberately?
Deliberately?
Yeah, none.
Zero. As I said to these guys the other day, no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. Just understand that. So as a teammate, pat them on the back, help them out, look after them, move on.
That's great. That's great messages. And, I love that part about no winning, no talking about winning. And I like about, okay, we get some time to talk about it at the beginning of the season, but that's not our focus. That's an outcome. We can't control outcomes. And one of the things I've done with a lot of the junior programs I've run is I'll give them a survey and I'll ask them why they're playing rugby. And these are grade 11 kids, and winning was mentioned by 1 out of 60 guys the last time I did this. And it's
is that right?
Yeah, and it's like. They don't value it. They don't. They may say they value it, or they may value it because of societal pressures or whatever. But what they value is hanging out with their mates, playing a game that they're maybe not familiar with, getting fit, playing a physical sport where they can get stuck in. And surprisingly or not, what popped out was also meeting people from the other team and going to different fields and stuff like that. So these are adult values that we place on kids, and I think your approach is bang on.
Yeah, I think I think it's important, and I've found that it's been a successful formula for me so far. And it just has included, out of these 85 boys I've got playing this year at the high school, there is probably only 60% have ever played before. And the further 40%, I've got kids in there that have never actually even played a contact sport or a sport before. Now, they choose rugby as their first sport, which is pretty cool.
Good on them, eh?
little nerve-wracking as a coach, but pretty cool. But, that's the sort of thing you want. You want them out there enjoying it, playing with their mates, as you say, and just having fun and knowing that nobody is going to judge them for whatever happens on that field.
Yeah, that's great.
And that is what this game's all about.
Yeah, that's powerful for young kids too, that concept of, because, you remember as being a kid in high school, you're so uncomfortable in your own skin when you're in grade 8, 9, 10, whatever.
Yep.
And just to be able to have that freedom to not be judged, not be criticised, and just go and play and, learn from those mistakes. Sure, we're not just going to leave them on the field. We're going to build from them, but we're going to do it in a positive and supportive environment. That's great.
That's exactly right. It's just it is important, and that's what it does for these kids, and that makes me proud every day that I go down there and train them. It just really is. It's exciting. I look forward to going down there every afternoon, and I get something out of it, which is great.
That's awesome. That's great. And what about challenges? We're surrounded by these glossy images of NFL and NHL and Major League Baseball and all that kind of stuff. Rugby can often be that kind of weird fringe sport that people haven't even seen. What have been your challenges in terms of starting up programs at schools and youth organisations?
Yeah, it's at times it gets a little tough. Parents are are scared of it. But we have a lot of parent meetings. At the beginning of the season, we have a couple with both the youth and the high school, and just bring everybody onto the same page and give them a full understanding of the benefits of the sport, but also the safety aspect of the sport. Because and as I explain to them, I might lose them in some of the conversation that I have, but over the last 40 years that I've been involved in this game, the game has changed so much. And everything, in my opinion, everything has been a change for the better. When I was doing scrums, we were about 12 yards apart, and now we're ear to ear, and it's just a phenomenal piece of machinery now that it's just things. The IRB and the USA Rugby and all the rugby communities around the world have made this game a much safer sport, and understanding and people thinking that the NFL is, safer than rugby is ludicrous, but that's okay. It's just what's around, and we're changing some minds. And I'm getting a lot of footballers from the high school who have come across and play rugby in their out season. So that's exciting, and and in fact, they've asked me to come this season, next fall, to the football team and help them coach tackling.
Great.
So that's an exciting aspect that we can put into the football team and start to get the cohesiveness between the two groups.
Yeah, well, that's symbiotic for sure. Like, and you hear, on forums and which they're forums after all, but you hear some schools there's a real divide on, okay, we're football, you're not allowed to have any contact with my athletes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
My athletes, that old saying. It sounds like you've got a group of football coaches there who are really looking to get some benefits out of rugby, and vice versa.
We do. We have some great football coaches there, and this has taken a few years. I can't say this was immediate, and it's taken time. I feel that what rugby does, particularly for football, is it scares them because, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but what I'm saying is that they feel that we'll compete against them, that their players will never come back to them, and that's not the idea for 1 second. No. These two sports can compete side by side, and they've got so many synergies and so many things that are alike, obviously, because that's where they started.
Yeah.
So that it should be encouraged by footballers to play rugby and rugby players to play football if they've got the opportunity. I think it's important.
Yeah. And what about crossover athletes? Who have you found have been the ones who pick up rugby the quickest?
Wrestlers.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Try and get wrestlers all day long.
Yeah, for sure.
And a couple of basketballers. So I've got some height
too, for me.
Some height in the lineouts.
Yeah. I've found that too. I've actually found the football guys are the hardest, just because of the nature of the stop-start game, and hockey guys as well, just because when they hear a whistle they stop. But for me, wrestlers for the contact work, and then basketball for the spatial awareness, and also soccer guys as well if they're tough.
Soccer is great. I've always been. If they're tough, that's exactly right. I've always been. I missed that one.
Yeah,
they've always been good rugby players in my mind. And basketballs, yes. Wrestlers are phenomenal. I've got a young bloke who's come down this week actually, who's a hockey player. I've never had a hockey player before.
Yeah.
He is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really, really impressive. Picks up the game and tough as mud. He's just phenomenal.
Well, it's funny. The first time I played hockey, and I'll go on the record here and say that I'm an atrocious hockey player. The similarities that I saw to rugby I was like a bit blown away. That the timing and the space and you're having your spatial awareness and those kind of things. So I think they do cross over well. It's just that a bit of upskilling around. Okay, there's advantage, and when a whistle goes, it doesn't mean we're stopping for an ad break here. Like it can start again.
Exactly right.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. All right. Well, looking a bit more closely at your coaching, obviously the set piece is clearly an area that you're passionate about. Starting with the line out, how do you go about building such a crucial part of the game in your practice, and especially with a bunch of kids who have never played before. And what's a session going to look like when you're first exploring the line out with them?
Right. Well, when I start the season, I'm looking at who I've got. Might have some new kids that have come in, and some other ones that have followed over from last season. And we're just looking at what we've got and how we can create an effective line out. Start with the throw in and teach those boys how to do that. And then look at my tall timber and find out what tall guys I've got and what guys that I've got that can manage to lift at pace and speed. And understanding when we're doing this that, you might find a guy who's really tall, but he's terrified when he goes up. And that's common, and that's okay. And then just mix them around and take your time with it until you can find the proper syncing and the proper understanding with them, and they just start to meld in. And we do a lot of set piece training every day at training, and that's part of my plan every day for that, as well as the backlines. But it's just a lot of set pieces.
Yeah, and so you gotta constantly balance there, like the level of complexity that you're gonna have compared to the profile of your team. How do you? What are some kind of tried and tested methods you've had, like with playing around with the numbers in the line out, the calls and those kind of things?
Yeah, look, I've come down to some really simple stuff where if we're coming in for a line out during a game, what I like to do now is I'll start with, I do a 5-man line out.
Mm-hmm.
Standard 5-man line out. I like that. It's simple. It still gives me some punch out the back line off the 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't come back to basic rugby, Andy. This is where this is how I play it. But so when they're coming in, we'll do a line out call. But what we'll do is they just go into a very quick 10-second huddle, decide where the ball's going, and then they line up and throw the ball.
Yeah.
I've gone away from the calls.
Yeah.
Just to simplify things a little bit more, make it clearer. As the season progresses, you can add some, I love little tricky line-out moves from time to time because they're fun and the boys actually really enjoy that. But when we just start like we have been the last couple of weeks and getting into the groove, just keeping it simple with just basic down to your front, down to your back if you can do it, if it's not too windy, and things like that. Just keeping it very basic, just getting the line-out guys to understand, the number one jumper to be able to take a step plus a half step straight up as quick as possible. It's all about inches, just making them understand it's speed and inches to get up there. Want that ball coming to their fingertips, and we're okay. I've got a new player this year for the varsity team, and he's a really tall fella, and he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
So just working on that and the safety aspect of it as well. And the other thing with that as well, and it comes back again to trust, is my line-out jumper going to give me everything he's got? He will when he trusts his lifters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the key, and we talk about that a lot. Just making sure that he trust he's going to trust you. You got to make sure that you don't let him down. So by dropping him on his head.
Yeah, that's
it never works.
Yeah, yeah. No, I got a lot out of. I had Scott Allen on the show, who you probably know the name. He's an Aussie. He was with the Wallaroos for a little bit, and he was also on the Green and Gold pod in the early days. And he talked about 4-man lineouts and how, if you are down to a point where you have one jumper, run a 4-man lineout. So many options, and very few teams defend against a 4-man lineout. So I've had quite a bit of success with that. This has come from a scrum half. I don't know anything I'm talking about here with the lineout, but it was that same principle though. I had one lineout jumper, and I had a 6-week season, which is like ridiculous. You're probably on the same boat there. You have a really, really small season, so got to simplify as much as you can, and then build throughout the season and add little elements to it.
That's exactly right. And at the moment I'm lucky. I always try and have two jumpers so that I can have the 5-man. I will even at times bring in a winger who I think is a decent winger to jump in the line out and put someone back on that cover, that wing.
Yeah.
I've done that on a couple of occasions, just mixing things up.
Yeah.
Giving him a couple of extra jobs.
He's gonna do it in sevens if he goes into sevens. So it's a great little
valid
skill
point.
set add-on. Yeah. Cool.
Valid.
Okay. Well, and I was talking about lineouts there. I know nothing about that. Something I know even less about is scrums. When you first start with your group, what are some of the kind of first things that you do and tend to be in the grassroots? What are some of the general areas of weakness that are consistently popping out that you see with young athletes?
You just have to take your time with the scrum, obviously, because it's probably one of the most what's the right word? I don't want to use that D word, Andy.
Yeah.
It's a tricky position if you're not coached at it properly. And but the one thing about it is when you get it right, it's the most beautiful thing you can ever watch. And it's just, you just got to take your time with it, and you've got to decide who's the right mix for your props and your hooker and your second rowers and your flankers and your number 8, and building the base from front to back. Obviously, that's why we're numbered 1 through 8. We start at 1 and work our way through. And I do a lot of neck exercises and proper stretching. We'll stretch as a team every afternoon when we start before we train. But when I break up backs and forwards, the forwards will then again go to another stretching exercise before we do scrums and lineouts, mostly because of scrums. And that will involve more upper body, the neck area and the shoulders, and just give them another warm-up prior to going into our scrums, because I just find that that's really an important aspect of it. And then we start to just work it through. We work our 3 front rowers first, and then we'll work out their form and their grips and their body heights, and then we'll put the second rowers into it, and then just work it back from there.
And
just nice and steady.
Yeah. So just basic body positions key in that. A lot of the guys who especially first timers, have probably never, because they're not allowed to play outside by themselves anymore. They've probably never been in that kind of scrummaging body position. What is that something you notice, that the ability to lock the back and be in that really strong, parallel position to the ground?
We do a lot of that parallel position 1-on-1. We do a lot of that. We do that every day at training, and I actually do that for the whole squad, the whole group of 85 kids, because it not only teaches you if you're a scrummager, it teaches you for scrummaging, but it also teaches the backs how to properly come into a ruck as well. Their body form and coming into a ruck, they need to be low and set. When they hit, they can drive through. It's the same scenario. So we do a lot of that every day. We just do that for about 5 minutes after we fully stretch as a team, so that everybody's in. We do the 1-on-1, and then we'll progress to a 2-on-1, and then we're just putting a little bit of pressure on it and just back and forward. And then when we go to and that gives them the body understanding and the body height without the scrum scenario, and then we can move them in. And then I will always bring in, I'll always bring in my professional guys, if you want to call it that, my seasoned players that I have there for the front row, if I have some, and everybody will watch as we go through that, and so that everyone can look at it, understand it, and then we start to pull off from there and introduce other players to those positions. It's a process.
Yeah, for sure. And in saying that, often you can be dropped in on a team. We'll touch on your consultancy work in a minute. It is a process, and it's a slow build, like a lot around rugby. But what if you only have one session with a group? They've asked you to come in. What is you've got 50 minutes with those guys. What's the bare minimum you're gonna want to cover?
Well, if you're walking into I was in California a couple of weeks back working with a D2 men's team, so they've got experience. I was asked to come in and work on their scrum. They've got the experience. They've done it before. So what I first do is ask them to set down 2 scrums, just to want to have a look at it. Watch what they do, and then pull it apart and start again from the front row. Now, we don't have to. I know the players can do this. They're seasoned players, so they understand the position, but just need to then tweak and teach them. We do the one-on-one, we do some neck exercises, and then we start to put the scrum together. We use the sled first, as best possible. If we've got a sled, we'll use the sled first, and then we'll just use the front row comes in, get their body form right. Then we'll bring the second rows in and show them how to lock themselves in, and then bring the number 8 and the flankers on, and then start to put that scrum together, understanding that they're going to hit where the power in a scrum comes from, which I'm quite surprised that, well, I guess I'm not, but a lot of people don't realise that 65% of the scrum power comes from the back 5.
Right.
And that's including your flankers. Flankers aren't used. People don't think your flankers are doing anything in a scrum, when in actual fact they are. I find that a lot. So it's important to be able to put that together, and then you're setting them up, and you're making sure that they're grounding themselves, they're puffing their chests out, they're firming up their bodies so that they can pull together. And when we go into a scrum, there's different techniques that you can use as well. One that I love is that we go into a scrum sled, and then I have them close their eyes and not use any communication except via their touch. So they tend to squeeze tighter.
Yeah.
They tend to be able to drive a lot easier.
Cool.
It's quite phenomenal what happens.
Yeah, I'm getting excited about that. That's cool. Reminds me, there's an Argentinian coach floating around in this part of the world who does similar things. He has people going barefoot up hills, that kind of stuff, to get that kinesthetic awareness kicking in.
Well, yeah, look, as a coach, I played number 1 for 30 years. I didn't move out of there. And Ewan McKenzie was one of my coaches when I was a kid. But all of that's changed. It's now become, because of the laws and what they've done with this scrum, they've created it to be, quite honestly, one of the best things going around. It's seriously it's such a game of chess, and your abilities and your binds and your tightness and your thoughts and your feelings, and it's become a beautiful piece of work. And once you do it right. And so I studied New Zealand, Argentina, everybody's scrums to try and figure out what is the best way to make a good scrum. And we all know Argentina has always had a good scrum.
Yeah, so that was what I was going to say. Who people wanting to see, who's doing it really well in the professional game or international game. Argentina's right up there, have been for a long time. Who else?
Argentina's always been good. They were good way back when, and they've gotten better now. Look, we cannot forget to mention Brazil.
Blew up the internet, that one, eh?
Oh, mate, seriously, that was truly phenomenal. That was a seriously superb effort, performance by the Brazilian team, who I thought were soccer players, but never mind.
Yeah.
But they could put one of the best scrums that the international rugby has probably ever seen, and really annihilated, unfortunately, the Eagles with that one.
Well, the Maori All Blacks as well.
And that's right. That's right. Don't forget that. That's exactly right. So they've really worked overtime to work out that piece of work, and that makes a big difference when your scrum's going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. Last thing before we wrap things up, you started up a rugby consultancy company recently called Scrum Down Rugby. What's a bit of a story about what you do there, and who's the clientele that you've been working with, and some of the success stories?
Look, I've been working with a couple of high schools in the local area that have asked me to come over. I went over to California the other week to do a T2 team over there. I've got some college teams down the Carolinas that are coming up in the next few weeks. There's interest out there that of people just wanting, because it's specific on set piece, mostly specific on set piece play, and a lot of teams are not really sure, and that's perfectly fine. I am a forwards head coach. A lot of people tend to be, and others coaches tend to be back coaches, so head coaches. So it's important to understand if you're going wrong somewhere, and put your hand up and And I'm finding that there's a lot of people that do want to put their hand up and say, look, can you give me a hand with this? I just need, and for example, when I went to California, they were having real problems in their scrum. They had no go forward whatsoever. I spent a couple of days there with them, 2-hour sessions, and their first weekend out, they won 3 tight heads, and they haven't stopped doing that since. So they've done very well, and it's just reminding teams and players that, unless you're all on the same page and have the same goal, then that scrum's not going to do what you want it to do. Getting your form right, it's not tricky, and then understanding that you want to be going forward, even if it's their ball. You want to be trying to pinch their ball every time they feed the scrum.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you go forward, and this is my high school, we can only go 1.5 meters, but I want to go 1.5 meters every single scrum. And so you want to go forward, and that way your backs are going forward, their backs are going backwards. It gives everybody on your team confidence.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with that. I think going into any situation in rugby is like, I've stopped calling it defence now. I call it attack without the ball. And basically your goal is to get that ball back, and scrums are no different, lineouts are no different. So if you're not competing in either of those set pieces, when you're not putting the ball in, you're missing an opportunity as a team, I feel.
You are totally missing an opportunity. And even if you don't get that ball back in a scrum, but you've still pushed them back, the opposition backs are going backwards before they can take that ball forwards.
Yeah.
So you've already got them on the back foot, and you're building confidence in your back line and yourself.
Yeah.
You're feeling good about yourself. And whenever you feel good about yourself, you do things better.
Yeah. No, great. Awesome. And if people want to reach out and contact you, what's the best way to do that?
They can go to my website, which is www.scrumdownrugby.com.
Okay, awesome, great, and I had a look around on it, and there's some good stuff on there, some really good testimonials too of the work you're doing. So that's great.
Thanks. Thank you, mate.
No worries. Awesome. All right. Well, we always end the show with the final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up, who was your idol? Who was the guy you really looked up to as a player? No doubt a David Campese style player.
Same era.
Okay. I've seen your answers. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Topo Rodriguez. Rodriguez.
Yeah.
I think I used to live about 20 minutes from Concord Oval, 10 minutes from Concord Oval, and when it cost you $10 to pay on the day to go to a Wallaby match, and I got his autograph one morning after a game, or one afternoon after a game, and I was wrapped. He was phenomenal. I just adored him. Absolutely adored him.
Yeah, he's just got a book out too around scrummaging too. I saw on.
And he does a lot of mental illness for men in Australia now too. He's a phenomenal advocate for a lot of things.
Yeah, totally agree. And yeah, I've seen a lot of what he does on LinkedIn, and he fires up every now and then, but
he does fire up every now and again. You don't want to say the wrong thing because he's going to bring you down real quick.
Yeah, but that's probably a props way of dealing with certain issues. But yeah, no, it's great. It's and on the mental illness side of things, he's a wonderful advocate for not just men's health but mental health in particular. And he's just put a book out, so I'm definitely keen to have a look at that. And it'd be like reading a foreign language for me, but I'll give it a crack. All right. What about now? Who's the player that you like? What they're doing?
I am really impressed with Quade Cooper at the moment.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you.
Yeah.
I've always been a reasonable fan of his. But watching him this year with the Rebels, his maturity level has gone through the roof, and he is not trying to win games by himself. He's using everybody around him, and I really think he's a strong contender for a number 10 spot in the Wallabies this year. I really believe that.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think it's funny. I think we, in Australia, we've been guilty of like tying players down who have that who are able to express themselves like that, and who are able to, be really creative and often, make a lot of mistakes, but also make some really, really amazing plays. And, as a 10, you get the ball in your hand more times than any other player, or probably other than the scrum half. And you're going to make mistakes. But I think what it says to me, and having had Dave Vessel's on the show before. I think he's in an environment where he's able to, thrive, and also express himself, but also, like you say, also just the big picture. You don't overplay your hand every game, and there's a time and a place. So I think I'm excited. Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see how he goes this season, especially against the New Zealand teams.
I think watching him. Yeah, you're right. He's a number 10 that, unfortunately, 10s are on their own, and everything they do is under a microscope, and we need them.
Yeah.
And yes, he does make him a lot of mistakes, but he was if we look back and think about Camper, how many mistakes did that guy make? But exactly. Boy, oh boy, he made some phenomenal things as well. So, and they've always got to do that. But I think his maturity level this year, and he's in an environment that obviously is suiting him. He's got his mate Will inside him, so everyone's happy. And I think that's a phenomenal thing for him. And I look at another guy I was watching and very keen on, and I know he's had some problems, but he deserves a second chance, is Carmichael Hunt. I look at that guy and I think that move to the Waratahs has been a great move.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the Checkers going to like those two, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. He's playing some good footy too at the moment. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting build-up for sure for the Rugby World Cup. And what about coaches? Who's third question? Who's a high-profile coach that you like what they do?
Oh, look, I love Eddie Jones. I would really like to sit in a room with him just one-on-one and try and pick his brain as best you can. I think that would be a very tricky exercise. But whatever is in there, I would like to get a hold of. I think that guy is quite phenomenal in what he does. And when you listen to him speak at these Harvard events or whatever these things over in the UK and what have you, he comes across really well, and he's just got so much knowledge. Love to watch him coach. I'd love to sit down with him and have a chat.
Yeah, great, awesome. Yeah, I agree. He's doing some good things, and I'm not a huge fan of the kind of coach v coach chat. I just, that always kind of prickles me up a little bit, but everything else is bang on.
Yeah, look, I'm not a big fan of that as well. I think they should just keep themselves quiet and get on with the business. But I think he's obviously done a great job with England, and that's fine. But I'm not put all of his wins and losses aside. I just find his rugby brain is truly phenomenal. I'd really like to be able to understand that better.
Yeah, great. All right, and last question before I let you go. Who's a coach in your community or coaches in your community that are doing really good work and deserve a shout out?
Look, we've got so many coaches around here at the youth level, the high school levels, and the college levels in this area of Fairfield County and what have you that I know, and they're all doing wonderful jobs, and they're all working together, and they're all trying to achieve the best that they can and what have you. But the one guy that I had as an assistant with me for the last couple of years, who's now moved on to another school, is Rich Gaspo. This guy is just, truly, he's got the nature to coach. He's got a soft nature and understanding. Terrific understanding of the game, but a great ability to understand the people that he's coaching, and he's a very impressive coach in my mind.
Awesome. All right, well, great way to wrap things up. All right then, David. Well, it's been great chatting with you. I'm always out of my comfort zone with scrums and lineouts, but I always like to come away with a couple of things, and this chat's been no different. So I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your stories about the good work you're doing over in Connecticut, and all the best for your seasons.
Andy, thank you very much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries at all. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.